Jeff, do we have Jay? Okay. Yeah.
They did mention the letter.
I'm checking to see if Mr. Baltz is online. We have one member of our panel that is joining us virtually today. There you are. Good morning. Good afternoon, Mr. Baltz. Good afternoon. What am I doing wrong here? Including minor variances to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Center Point Drive. We're also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube, and the video will be archived and available for future public viewing. My name is Fabien Poulin. I'll be chairing today's hearings and can address me by my name or as chair. And with me are my fellow panel members, Jay Baltz, George Barrett, Heather McLean, and Julianne Wright. As part of the statutory notification requirements, each applicant was required to post a sign on the property in question before the hearing. They also had to confirm in writing if they did so, or they'll need to swear or affirm an oath today that they fulfilled the sign posting requirements. Otherwise, we may have to adjourn or postpone the hearing. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of an application, followed by questions for the applicant and the city planning staff. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof, will have an opportunity to make the final comments and reply. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting with your name and spelling it if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes. Any exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision, which means it won't be delivered today. In either case, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all parties, participants, and anyone else who has requested a copy. Does anyone have any questions about the procedure we're following today? No questions? Thank you. We have several applications to hear today, but first we must deal with some preliminary procedure matters. Are there any declarations of interest? I believe we have two. First of all, Ms. McLean, do you have a declaration of interest?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm declaring a conflict of interest in item number 7 on panel 1's agenda. Application A00198 by Madame Rockcliffe Inc. for property at 681 Mechanic. As a member of my family is employed by the applicant.
Thank you, Ms. McLean. Now, Mr. Baltz, do you have a declaration of interest? Can you not hear it? Can't hear. Mr. Houston, can you help Mr. Baltz have a voice? It looks like it says that you're muted. There you are. Can't hear? You can hear? Okay, we can't hear you. Hang tight, everybody. We're just trying to resolve this little hiccup. I think this is the first time this panel has had to deal with a member of the panel being remote. But can you hear us now, Mr. Bolts? Like, we don't think we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, let's see if this works. Yes, so I have on item number 2, because the applicant and I are in the same department where I until recently worked at the Ottawa Hospital.
Thank you, Mr. Bolts. Now we'll move on to our unopposed applications. And we have one unopposed application. That is application number 1, having to do with 2458 Cleroux. And in order for this application or any application to be unopposed, it must meet the following criteria. No objections are concerned from the parties, that is the applicant, the city, or the public. There are no amendments required, no registered speakers. Sign posting declaration has been received. Applicant or agent has confirmed that they agree with all requested conditions, if there are any, and no questions from panelists. The one application is 2458 Cleroux, and I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to pass this as an unopposed application. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And I see Mr. Baltz is raising his hand. Thank you very much. This application is approved. Now we'll proceed in order. So we'll skip number 2, having to do with 2019 Kings Grove, as Mr. Baltz has a conflict. We'll deal with number 3, which is 1 Sunny Brae Road, and Mr. Jalkotzi. Are you available, sir?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jalkotzi. Could you give us a brief description of your application today, sir?
Yes, I have a presentation there.
Okay.
Next slide, please. Location of the site is on a corner lot on Carling and Sunny Brae. Next slide, please. The subject property has a front lot line on Carling and side yard lot line on Sunny Brae. Although the house that's under construction faces onto Sunny Brae and therefore is addressed as 1 Sunny Brae. Next slide, please. We examined a number of locations for a detached garage, and subsequently in discussion with planning staff agreed on placing the garage adjacent to the garage to the property on the north. The garage doors face Churchill Carling, so they do not face the side yard. In other words, they are designed so that only a side wall with window will face Sunny Brae instead of having the garage doors face that. As a result, there are a number of minor variances requested. Next slide, please. You'll note the location of the proposed garage. So the first minor variance has to deal with the area permitted for a accessory buildings, cumulative area of 55 square meters. The garage itself is 55 square meters, and the owners want to add a pool house. So that necessitates a minor variance in area permitted. That variance would permit a lot area, an accessory building area of 69.9 square meters, whereas the bylaw would permit only 55 square meters. The rationale for why this should be deemed minor is that even as a result of the large rear yard on this property, the aggregate area of the buildings only takes up 14% of the rear yard, whereas up to 50% is permitted in a smaller rear yard. So you have these two maximums. You have a maximum of 50% or a maximum of 55 square meters. The small corner of the property of the building that is under construction was identified as not meeting the rear yard setback requirement. It only does so on the north east corner of the property. The remainder of that addition is considerably less. So the difference in the setback is roughly 0.3 meters, so about a foot of a corner that intrudes into the rear yard setback with the constructed building. So the rest of the building significantly exceeds the rear yard setback, so therefore should be considered a minor variance. The two other minor variances have to do with the garage. One, by facing the garage doors towards Churchill and not facing the street, it required a wider driveway to permit turning of the vehicles into the garage doors. And similarly, because the garage itself is closer to Sunny Brae than the principal entrance, which is on the side of the building, it requires a minor variance to permit it to be closer to the corner side yard of that property. Now, intriguingly enough, had, for example, the entrance of Sunny Brae been on, or of the property been on Carling, then the garage doors would not be facing the front and front property line, and therefore effectively they are in the rear yard. So they're right adjacent to the existing garage in the neighboring property. In addition to that, we would argue that under certain circumstances, they would be permitted. So the side yard requirement is 4.5 meters. They exceed the side yard requirement of 4.5 meters in terms of being set back from the property line. So we felt that this would be the least impact effect and maintain the character of the single family home as being the predominant entrance feature for the property. In other words, you can't see the garage doors. They don't come out in front of you.
1 more minute, sir.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions for the applicant. Ms. Wright?
I do, and through you, Mr. Chair, the one question I have has to do with the one minor variance that you didn't address, so variance D. I guess I'd like to understand a little bit more as to why you need the 7.6 meter width and you can't make the 6 meters work.
Okay. Right now, if you put back up the slide, the last slide. Oh, sorry, one before that. Thank you. You'll note the blue line cutting across, and the difficulty is that the driveway is being maintained at 6 meters wide, but because the width of the driveway is measured parallel to Sunny Brae, it requires the wider width. That's the only reason why. And the other reason, of course, is that the garage is closer to the property line than the house, so therefore it's in the side yard. Had that been behind the front yard or side yard requirement of the existing house, remembering that the side yard requirement is 4.5 meters. Had that house been built to the 4.5 meters, there would be no minor variance required. So it has to do with both the geometry and the location of the driveway so that you can access the garage doors adequately in a turning radius for a vehicle.
So if you narrowed though the blue line, which is the 7.6, could you not have narrowed the driveway at that point and still get car in and out?
So what would happen is you would now be closer to the garage door. So generally a vehicle requires 6.7 meters of 6.7, 6.6 down to as low as 6 for a smaller vehicle. Generally, the parking requirements are, if I recall them correctly, they're 6.7 meters for the backing up space for a vehicle into a parking space. So this is why. So if you narrowed it down, the angle, okay, so when you went to turn into the most southerly garage space, you would not be able to make the turn into the corner.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Baltz, you have any questions? No questions? Ms. McLean? No questions. Thank you. Now I'd like to turn to planning services. Ms. Horn, do you have any comments on this application?
Thank you, Mr. Poulin. I have no further comments.
Thank you very much. Now, there are no persons in the public that wish to speak on this matter, I don't believe. No? Okay. I'd like to give you the last word, Mr. Giacozzi.
Just to note that the client has consulted with all of the neighbors and has a letter of support from the immediate neighbor adjacent to the property. In addition to that, is planning to do significant landscaping, as you would see in the final slide that I didn't show you, on the face of the garage wall. So that's why we included the landscaping plan, although for obvious reasons, variance wouldn't be tied to that.
Thank you very much. Okay, now I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to reserve this application. Mr. Baltz? Mr. Baltz online reserves. Anyone else? All else raise your hands. This application we reserve, sir. We'll let you know in 10 days in writing of our decision.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and panel.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to application number 4. This application has to do with 1542 Chatelain Avenue. And I'm looking for Mr. Thomas Freeman.
Good afternoon, Chair. I'm Mr. Thomas Freeman.
Thank you. Would you please give us a brief description of your application today?
Yeah, I have a presentation if you could bring it up, please. Next slide, please. Just to provide some context for the location of the subject site. It's fronts onto Chatelain Avenue. It has an area of approximately 1.04 hectares and also has a frontage on McBridge Street to the east. The north of the subject property, the land's uses are characterized by light industrial uses, while to the east of McBridge Street, the land uses are predominantly residential. Next slide, please. The purpose of this permission application is to permit the use of an automobile service station for a proposed automobile repair garage to be located in the existing building. Section 45(2) of the Planning Act gives the Committee of Adjustment the ability to change the legal non-conforming use of land, building, or structure to a similar or equally or more compatible use. The purpose of this application is to permit, to permit the automobile repair garage in, in a unit that is currently occupied by a legally non-conforming warehouse use. The twofold test for permission applications is based upon both the desirability for development of the property in question and the impact on surrounding areas. Next slide, please. Just some context of the existing building and property. You can see there that the existing property is occupied currently by legally non-conforming uses, including a warehouse, printing plant, and office space. Next slide. This just shows around the property, as well as slides 5 or photos 5, sorry, 6 and 7 and 8 show additional light industrial uses adjacent to the property. Next slide, please. So the proposed automobile garages will occupy an area of approximately 264 square meters of the existing building on the ground floor, fronting onto Chatelain Avenue, utilizing an existing garage door. This space was previously used as a warehouse, and further back, it was also used to service vehicles as part of the pharmaceutical company that occupied the building back in the 90s. Next slide, please. So this shows the location of the proposed automobile repair garage. Just noting to the left, there's an existing service bay for the warehouse that is a legal non-conforming use. Next slide. I'm just going into the twofold test for a permission application. Is the application desirable for the appropriate development of the property? The proposed use of an automobile repair garage is considered appropriate for the subject property as it is consistent with the existing legal non-conforming uses, and the proposal utilizes the existing industrial building with a use that is similar in impact and intensity to the existing legal non-conforming land uses. The site was previously zoned M1 under the Z2K 1984 zoning bylaw, which permitted a public garage. A public garage was defined as a building other than a private garage used for the care, repair, painting, servicing, sale of gasoline, oil or lubricants, washing or equipment of motor vehicles, or where such vehicles are stored for hire for sale. This definition is consistent with the current zoning bylaws definition for an automobile service station. Additionally, north of the subject property, the lands are zoned general industrial, subzone 1, which permits a range of light industrial uses, including an automobile service station. It is therefore desirable for the appropriate development of the property. Next slide, please. Will the application result in any undue adverse impacts on the surrounding properties and neighborhood? The proposed automobile repair garage is located within an existing industrial building in an area characterized by other equally intensive industrial land uses. The proposed automobile repair garage is located approximately 70 meters from the nearest residential property to the east, with an industrial zone property at 1526 Chatelain Avenue between the subject property and the nearest residential properties. Therefore, no additional undue adverse impacts are anticipated as part of the proposed automobile use. We did receive a letter regarding traffic from a resident. I'd like to address that. So we believe that the additional permitted use would not adversely impact the proposed traffic in the area more than the additional industrial uses legally permitted on the property, including warehouse and printing plant. We don't feel that those the size of the automobile garage, which is only one bay, will increase traffic and create undue impact on the adjacent streets. There's adequate parking on the site to support the proposed automobile use. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions for the applicant. Ms. McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for clarification purposes, I think your letter indicated that there was a zoning bylaw amendment in 1995. Was that when the uses became legally non-conforming?
That's correct. It was 1998 that, or I believe it was 1995. Just let me check the date. Yeah, so it was 1998 that there was a rezoning for the property, the entire property to a residential land use to permit residential development. That development was never carried out. And so the legal non-compliant uses that are listed in my letter have existed since then, including the warehouse use.
Okay, so that's where I want some clarification. So the rezoning in 1998, what were the existing lawful uses of the building at that time?
Yeah, so I couldn't list them. So there was a warehouse that was used and it's changed hands a number of times. But in since 1998 and going back to 1997, E.H. Price had a warehouse and office use, which is now the Old Dutch office and warehouse. There's also there was a handyman office that's currently in there. There's also a printing plant, which is the Astley Gilbert printing plant, which was previously Dolco Printing, which predated the 1998 zoning bylaw amendment.
So as of the rezoning in 1998, the existing uses that were lawfully, there's a warehouse office, an office and a printing plant?
Correct.
And your position is that the service station use is similar to
The warehouse.
the warehouse use?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask Mr. Balch if he's got any questions for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, what was the intent of, you briefly mentioned that there was a plan for residential development, and that's why it was included in R4UC and R5B zones, I believe. So what was the intent of doing that at the time, and why were these uses made non-conforming?
I can't speak to that too much because it was back in 1998, but the intent was to redevelop the property entirely with a residential use. I think it was a 5-story residential apartment building. But the intent was to continue to operate the legally established uses until that development was realized. It hasn't been realized. And we're in a situation where we have legally non-conforming uses on the site.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Mr. Barrett if he's got any questions. Ms. Wright? Okay.
Thank you.
Ms.
Thank you,
McLean?
Mr. Chair. Can you confirm then that the warehouse use has continued uninterrupted until the date of this application?
Yes, we have gone through the documentation with the owner, and we submitted a table outlining the continuation of the warehouse use since 1997 with staff. It's changed hands a number of times with different tenants, but the warehouse use we can confirm through the letter, which is now on the screen, which shows the table of uses is the Old Dutch, which is currently occupied by Old Dutch in units 1540 and 1542. That has continued to be a warehouse and office use since 1997.
And the area where the service station is going in looked vacant in the pictures. but that was an area that was previously occupied by a warehouse user?
It's been used as a number of different uses, but that includes a warehouse use.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a couple of questions for the applicant. Now you showed us the picture of where this garage is going to go. How many parking spaces are associated with this garage?
There is parking around the side of the building. On a typical day, it's anticipated that customers will park their car in the parking lot. And then it'll be brought over to the automobile service bay, which is shown in that picture. And then it'll be fixed and then returned to that parking lot.
What does the zoning bylaw say about parking for a service garage?
I'm sorry, I don't have that on hand.
Okay, I'll ask that of planning after. Now, I've been in this industry, so I know a little bit about these types of uses, but are there any plans to put in a sand or oil interceptor to have the water drain out of the garage during the winter?
I'm not an expert on this specifically. I know that the building is being modified to accommodate this use, but I don't know the specifics of the materials or the technology used.
Okay, I know that, so from my past experience, only like you get 3 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet for an industrial use. Used to be 1.5, but now it's 3, I believe. I just hope there's enough parking on the site, but I'll ask that of our planning after we hear from them. That's all the questions I have. Now I'd like to ask planning for their comments with respect to this application.
Thank you, Mr. Poulin. Staff have no concerns with this application. And if you give me a moment, I can look into the parking space rates.
Okay, I'll give you a couple of minutes. So we'll just wait for planning to get back to us about the parking issue. So, Mr. Houston, can you pull up the site plan as well as the area in blue that was highlighted where the new use is expected to go? Just from my past experience, Mr. Freeman, and I have some recent experience with garages that are repair garages. They have a lot of extra vehicles kicking around the site at all times. And it causes some consternation for the property owner and as well as the other tenants in the building, and it could spill out onto the street. So that's the reason for my questions. So that's the plan for the space, but I was looking for the outside description or picture that pretty much only shows, in my mind, only 3. No. And this is Cleroux. This is not, I'm looking for Chatelain. There you go. So I'm looking for the picture of the, I guess the blue is 1,546 square feet, and I don't have a parking scale on there. But there was another shot of the site from above, from Geo Ottawa, I think. I think it's one of the slides after this one. There you go. Keep on going. Next one. Oh. Maybe it's before.
I think is it slide 2 you're looking for the overview of the?
That's one, and then the other one was where you had it outlined in blue on the elevation of the site. Okay, so where are they going to be parking?
So on the left side there, accessed off of Chatelain Avenue, there is an existing parking lot that will be utilized for the proposed use.
Okay. You know how many parking spaces are allocated for this building?
That space, approximately 30 spaces there for the whole building, and then there's another parking lot on fronting McBride Street, which is for the warehouse use, and that has truck loading bays.
Okay, so how big is this building? Total size?
If you go to that, the next slide with the outline, it should have it there, or I can pull it up. Approximately 3,000 square meters.
So it's 30,000 feet plus or minus. And so at 3,000 square, so you need 90 parking spaces, is that right?
I, based on what ratio?
3 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet?
Um, if that's correct, I'd have to.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. We
Yeah.
gotta check with this.
Check with staff
Yeah.
on that.
Okay. What can you tell us, Ms. Horn?
So in terms of the automobile service station, it's the greater of 0.5 per 100 square meters, or 1 per service bay for the automobile service station.
The greater of. So how much is 0.5 of, you've got 1.
And it's about 267 square meters. So it would be 1.
1.5 parking
Yeah.
spaces per 1,000 square feet.
Yeah.
Oh, 1.5 parking spaces is all you need. I can tell you from my experience, they use 5 times or 10 times that on a daily basis. Anyway, that's just my comment. I don't know whether do you agree with me?
I'm sure that happens. I think for the size and scale of this, from a zoning perspective, I think it's appropriate for the number of spaces and the size.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'd like to move on to Ms. Horn and see what she has. Any comments with respect to this application? No. Okay, ask the panel now if you have any questions, Mr. Baltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'd like to get back to the same question of why this was rezoned residential and then through, that was zoning bylaw 1998, but we've had another consolidation since then. And I'm wondering why this was maintained as residential at that time and not, these uses weren't regularized.
This is a question for planning.
Yes, planning staff, please.
Ms. Horn?
I see Ms. O'Connell has raised her hand.
I'll let my colleague, Ms. O'Connell, answer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have some historical background on the zoning bylaws in the previous decades, and I know I can attest that the 2008 zoning bylaw that came into effect was in fact that. It was a consolidation of all the bylaws from across different municipalities in the city, but the bylaw that we're undertaking right now, this new draft bylaw, is the actually first time that we've looked at parcels on an individual basis. So at the 2008 version, all it would have done was carry forward the zoning bylaw from the previous 1998 version without looking at each parcel individually.
So if I can follow up, Mr. Chair, the reason this is zoned residential is because of a plan 2 bylaws ago or before the last time the bylaw was actually written to make this residential, but that hasn't happened. So these non-conforming uses have simply kept going without a rezoning to accommodate them, right?
That's staff's perspective, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. McLean, do you have any comments or questions for staff? Ms. Wright? Mr. Barrett? Okay. So my only question would be coming down to the use, if this is approved, who will be the persons taking care of the making sure that the oil and sand interceptor is installed in the garage? Do you know, Ms. Horn? Would that be building code services?
Thank you, Mr. Poulin. I think it would be down to building code services.
Okay. Generally, it's neglected. It's just not done. Just that whoever moves in and repairs vehicles they just don't do it. So I just want to make sure that you understand that that's what I hope that somebody from if this is approved from Building Code Services, gets a little bit of this discussion and follows up and makes sure that there's a drain and a sand interceptor in there. Okay,
Yep. Just on that, they will require a business license, and that's kind of what started this whole process because it wasn't identified as a permitted use.
okay,
So through that process, they will, I'd like to hope that the city will check that that is required and provided.
okay. Thank you very much. I don't have any further questions, so Jay, do you have a hand up? No?
I do not. No, thank you. Mr.
Okay.
Chair.
Now, Mr. Freeman, it's up to you for the last word.
I don't have anything more to say. That we agree with staff's position that this is an appropriate use for the property. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to reserve on this decision. All those in favor, please raise your hands. And I see Mr. Baltz is raising his hand as well, so we will be reserving decision and you will receive our written decision in 10 days. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Now I'd like to excuse Mr. Baltz. Thank you very much for your help today, Mr. Baltz, as he's got a conflict on item number 2, which will be our last item on our agenda today. Thank you, Mr. Baltz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Someone can contact me by email when you're going to discuss the reserve decisions.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Goodbye.
So this application has to do with 2019 Kings Grove Crescent. And I believe Mr. Robinson is here. Good morning. Afternoon. So I think we're just going to speed through as we understand a lot about your application. I just want to see if you received the planning report with the amendment to variance D.
That is the variance related to the deck and the canopy in the corner side yard. Yes.
Correct.
And I've had discussions with Ms. Horn late last week, and the proposed new wording is acceptable.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they have any questions for Mr. Robinson, Ms. McLean, Ms. Wright, Mr. Barrett. Okay, thank you. I'd like to ask planning services if they have any questions, Ms. Horn.
We have no
Comments?
concerns. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone have any questions for Ms. Horn, Mr. Barrett, Ms. Wright? No, Ms. McLean, and I do not either. So you'll have the last word, Mr. Robinson.
This is just an addition in the rear yard of an existing home, and to provide for a larger garage. The property owner has been in contact with the property owners to the north, who are the most impacted by this, and there is email communication that's on file. They're in agreement with it, and they've also spoken with the neighbors to the east and the northeast, and I prepared a summary of the application, and that was delivered by the owners, so there's no concerns by any of the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to ask the panel if they would like to approve of this application. All those in favor? Your application is approved, Mr. Robinson. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And I think that concludes our hearings for today. Thank you all, everybody, for your help, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thank you.